Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Bridget. As you all know, this is Bridget's Line. I have a little intro video on my channel that you can watch to learn a little bit about me. But without further ado, I want to jump right into today's interview. I have the great privilege of interviewing someone who's very close to me, but who's also very knowledgeable about topical issues right now. His name is Sylvester. So Sylvester, I'll allow you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Okay, thank you very much, Bridget, for having me on your line. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Sylvester Demuyakor from Ghana, currently in Beijing, China Foreign Affairs University, pursuing my master's degree in international relations. I'm passionate about Africa's prospects for development. I'm passionate about what China's rise is for Africa's development. I'm passionate about how the two countries can use diplomacy to ensure that both sides develop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm passionate generally about Africa's development. And so my current thesis topic is about a comparative analysis of Ethiopia and Ghana's economic development in the last 10 years, trying to look at what the trajectories were and who did what and how did they do it and what each country can learn from each other. So yes, that is Sylvester in a few seconds.
You took some minutes there, but we won't judge you. No, I'm kidding. We're so honored to have you because I think for some of the people in my network, many of us are actually outside of China. You're one of the few people that I know are still in China. I actually have an extensive network of Africans who are studying in China for various reasons. But many of them were actually out of the country at this time, right? So you're one of the few people that I know in China. So can you tell us a little bit about I know you're a master's student in China. Can you talk about when you arrived in China and kind of what's going on now? What's been your experience being there during this time?
Okay, so I've been here for the past 6 months, since September,
Mm-hmm.
and just after 4 months of my stay,
Mm-hmm.
then coronavirus took over.
Mm-hmm.
Currently under minimal quarantine because the school has restricted movements
Mm-hmm.
outside campus and even within campus without a mask. And so I've been indoors for the past 3 months, doing my own thing. I mean, working on my thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult going out to buy things that you want to especially if you want to eat a type of food, it's difficult to go out. You just have to make do with what is inside here. And so the experience has been both uh, excruciating, so to speak, and interesting at the same time because, like I said earlier, I'm working on my thesis, so I don't really see how time goes. So I'm here.
Right. So you got into China, let's say 3 months before this whole pandemic kind of started, right? Um,
Exactly.
yeah. And so what was your thinking when other African students were either deciding to leave or we saw videos of people pleading, African students pleading with their governments to come and basically repatriate them from China. What were you thinking at that time?
Yes, in fact, I had a direct experience of that where a friend, immediately the virus issue came up, she
Mhm.
had to leave the following day. I was surprised,
She had
I
to
had
leave?
yes, she left to Ghana
Oh,
the
okay.
following day.
Okay.
So I was like, hey, how are you holding up in your campus? She said, I'm in Ghana. I said, what? You're in Ghana? Yes. She said, I left yesterday dawn. I said, okay, well, I wish you well. And I had a couple of friends who had flown back to their countries. But
Mm,
hey, my thing was, how about if I'm in the airport and I contract this disease? I
mm,
mean, it's just safer to be in my dormitory.
mm,
Uh, Luckily enough, I have everything I want. Taobao is working. I can always order for food. I can always order for food items. And I have a Walmart just 2 minutes away from me. And so I felt like, and it's time to work on my thesis as well. So
mm,
I felt like possibly these guys don't really have enough to do in China, so it makes sense to go, or they are just very, very much afraid of what will happen next.
Yeah.
So I decided to just stay put and observe all the medical precautions that have been
Mhm.
suggested.
So you weren't afraid.
I was, but I felt like I'm in my room. I wouldn't go out. I would just have to stay in my room. I have a gari with me that is a Ghanaian type of food. So if I'm dying of hunger, I would just have to soak morning,
Right.
afternoon, evening and survive. So
Right.
it's not like I wasn't afraid. I was, but I just felt like this is safer. I mean, I
Mhm.
wouldn't go out. I have my mask and everything. So
So it's safer for you to be in China than to travel. So now, I mean,
yeah.
now we're in the opposite situation where I'm in New York City right now, and it seems like we're now in two completely different worlds, right? 2 months ago, you were under strict quarantine on your campus, like you shared, and now the U.S. is on strict quarantine. And you just mentioned that things are kind of changing in China right now. You feel like things are opening up. First, let me backtrack a little bit. Can you talk about where specifically in China you are? And second, what is going on right now?
Okay. Currently in Beijing, the capital city, and in a place called Xicheng.
Mm-hmm.
That is the locality, that's the area where I am, where my school is located.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for 2 months ago, things were on standstill. Nothing was happening.
Right.
But gradually, I can feel like things are changing because I can hear kids playing at the back of my window, and I can hear the sound of cars. I can hear a lot of things going on, and I can feel like things are gradually moving back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And also on my WeChat friends page, I can see people posting pictures, taking pictures here and there, and so hopefully things should go back completely to normal maybe in the next 1 month or 2 months.
1 to 2. Wow. So even after being on quarantine for 3 months, you still expect it to be another 2 months before things fully open up.
Yes, because what is happening in Beijing is that there are a lot of people flying back. I
Mm.
mean, people are coming into Beijing, and so
When you say
things are not
people, I'm only Chinese residents, right?
not only Chinese, we have foreigners who are also coming into Beijing. And so the situation in Beijing is not very good
Mm.
because even as Wuhan, the epicenter, is not recording cases, Beijing is recording like 30 a day, which are all imported cases.
Mm.
And so the provincial government is very strict currently. And so even though things are gradually moving back to normal, I think Beijing will have to still we still have to be quarantined for some time before we
I
are allowed
understand.
that
I
freedom
understand.
that we deserve.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. But you were saying um, that people can come in. I think before we started recording, you were saying that like African students who left can come back in. So I was surprised to hear you say that foreigners are coming into Beijing. I thought you said all visas have been like revoked.
Yes, so until yesterday when the publication came up, that was what was happening. That's what I
Okay.
meant by that. But
Oh, okay, okay.
but for now, no foreigner can come into Beijing.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I mean, so kind of what's now the latest news that I read, the US has kind of surpassed China in the number of cases overall. I think China's at 81,000 and the US is about right at that mark. Either we've surpassed it or we're right at that mark, right? And being in New York City, which is the epicenter of the US outbreak, and just a few days ago, the mayor kind of said that almost half of all New Yorkers will get the virus. Um, what 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 is the conversation like in China, let's say on social media about this? Like now the spotlight is outside of China, it's in the US. What is the sentiment on social media about what's going on outside of the country as it relates to this virus?
Yes, so not I'm not quite sure of what others are saying because social media in China is a bit restricted. I mean,
Right.
people don't want to voice their sentiments. But
Mhm.
a couple of friends have told me that so a
Oh no. This was just getting good. I hope I don't have to cut and paste this together. Jeez. So, folks.
receive any help
Okay,
from
okay.
our
So
people.
Lester, hold on. You froze. So for my audience, Sylvester froze. We believe it's due to, VPN technical issues. So please bear with us. It may be on my side, even though, but let's see. Sylvester, that was a really important like statement you were about to make. So I want you to take it from the top again. So you were saying you don't know. More people are saying because social media is very more restricted in China than it is outside. But you were saying something about what your friends are kind of saying they're seeing.
Yes, so I had a chat with a friend of mine who is currently in Wuhan, and in the middle of the conversation, he mentioned that he thinks Trump is going through a lot of pressure now. So I said, why? He said he thinks the situation is getting out of hands in the US, and Trump is so proud not to learn from his government and his country. So I was like, okay, well, maybe let's see. If things become more serious, he might turn to your government. So let's hope things, and then the conversation ended. So what is happening is that people have retained that confidence in the government of China because they
Mhm.
feel the government was very proactive in building hospitals in 10 days and doing a lot of stuff. So people are generally happy
Mhm.
about what is, of course, my friends are happy about how the situation was handled in China and the fact that things just dwindled in months, you know.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if we can say the same thing about situation in the US. I don't know if I can say that we definitely don't see that same level of confidence. For example, Hillary tweeted something in the past, her old tweet that said that imagine if Trump was president, and there was like a serious crisis. And apparently that tweet resurfaced, and people were saying, "Oh, now we're seeing." So there seems, and Hillary responded back, right? So there's a whole sentiment or whole. I don't want to say it's bipartisan, but there's a whole group of people who really feel um, under kind of undertaken care of, if that's a word, or not well taken care of by the government during this time. Especially because they feel like the response was late in the US, that the US didn't take it seriously, and things like that. So I'm going to kind of transition
But
into.
the 2 trillion stimulus is something to talk about, you know.
Yes, yes. I think on the economic side, right, that's tremendous. But again, for a lot of people on both the health side and the economic side, it doesn't compensate for the loss of, you know, either money or lives, right? Like
Yeah, that
the
makes
US
sense.
is like the US's GDP is a multi-trillion-dollar um economy. So to have the economy stop and get a $2 trillion stimulus is not even enough. The average household is only getting like $1,000.
$1,000,
Yeah,
yes.
and that's if you fall below a certain a certain income level. Not to talk about like the hit to people's like savings. I think about like older people who are thinking about retiring maybe in the next 5 years, and you've had your savings completely wiped out if it was invested in the stock market
Mhm.
during this time. So I mean, I think generally in America we get that there's some effort being taken, but is it enough? And could it have been avoided entirely? Is kind of what we're thinking about. But I want to transition and then talk about the global space. There are two questions that I want to ask here before we kind of close out, and I'll have like some follow-up questions within those questions. The first question is, what do you think China's position will be after this pandemic? Where do you think China will stand after this?
Yes, so there are a lot of scholars writing about this whole coronavirus
Mm,
and the fact that it has that potential of changing great power politics,
mm,
changing superpower positions
mm,
after the epidemic, because some scholars have said that the Suez crisis
mm,
in the 16th or the 17th century, if my memory serves me right, brought a closure to Britain's dominance over world politics because Britain mishandled the situation, and that was what caused its downfall. And so scholars are saying that if the US does not handle the situation well, then any country that proves capable might take over, and possibly that will be China.
Mm.
Now, China, yesterday I read, I mean, the government officially published that they have extended help to about 80 countries worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they are doing this intentional to just let the world know that, hey, this is what we are doing in times of such a pandemic. And we are really putting into practice what we meant or what we mean by a community of shared future for mankind. You know, that has been the foreign policy emphasis all along.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see Jack Ma sending test kits and nose masks here and there to Africa. In fact, I heard he's sending some down to the US. China is, as it were, technically supporting Iran, supporting Italy, supporting a lot of countries.
Mm-hmm.
So where will China be after this? I think that China will really strengthen its diplomatic bilateral relations with other countries that as well we're not friends of China, because like you and I know, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And so
Right.
if you lend a helping hand to me during this time of crisis, I owe you a debt of gratitude afterwards. And so China will really change its image of a helper. You know, it will have that image of a helper country after all is said and done.
Yeah, so I was like busy writing down so many notes as you were speaking. I think you touched on a number of good points, right? This idea, I think outside of China, and I want to restate it because outside of China, we don't actually know that this is the Chinese quote unquote political manifesto, which is the shared future for all mankind. Is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, I hear you, and I hear the scholars that who are saying that if the U.S. doesn't handle this right, per my notes, that of what you were talking about, if the U.S. doesn't handle this right, China could very well come up to be kind of the leader in the geopolitical space, right? But my question now is, at least in the U.S. today, I read a news article about a law like a lawyer and some of his associates and like an entire group of people actually filing a lawsuit against China for coronavirus, saying that it's a bio biological warfare
Weapon, yeah.
weapon. And they're suing, I believe they are suing China $20 trillion, and Chinese economy is like $12 trillion. So I know like it's they might be kind of overstating the point with their amount, but the sentiment is actually true, and it's something that I've heard privately where people are also saying, yes, scholars may be saying that China will come out on top, but there's a lot of actually resentment on the lower level, at least in the US, about like where this came from. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, is there a possibility that it could entirely backfire on, kind of like the Chinese ideology when all of this is said and done?
Yes, so I think I read such a story, such a suit, I mean, that 20 trillion or that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for now, I'm not very, very much vested in such biochemical, biological, weapons and all that. But the two countries, China is part of the Biological Weapons Commission that was established to, as it were, to make sure that countries don't produce, these weapons. So, since China is part, it's liable to be sued. It's liable to face legal sanctions, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But how viable is it? What are the facts? Like I said, I don't really know, because people are saying it came from Wuhan because China was trying to produce it. And now China is saying that it came from the US because the US military guys brought it down here. So I don't really know what the dynamics are, but
Right.
anything is possible. What I will suggest is any legal issue should be calm for now, should not surface now. Let's look at how best we can we can contain this virus, and afterwards we can talk about any geopolitical, do the blame game here and there. But for now, I propose that the world keeps calm and concentrates on how we can save lives, how we can make sure that we contain the common enemy, which is the coronavirus.
I understand. That's fair. So I'll end with this question, since this is your thesis, this is your area of expertise, which is, where do you see Africa in this conversation? And what do you think, where does the future lie for China-Africa relations post this pandemic?
Okay. So the Sino-African relations and Africa's role during this pandemic is a bit not clear. So let me touch on Sino-African relations. I mean, Sino-African relations is going to be strengthened after this because China is just doing what other countries are not doing. I mean, like I said earlier, Jack Ma has just shipped down, 20,000 worth of kits to African countries, testing kits, which are the right things that African countries need now, taking into consideration their limited budgets, allocations to counter such pandemics or such viruses. So the Sino-African relations is going to be strengthened. I can see a lot of ambassadors in the countries doing a lot. They are publishing what China can do to help the local countries or the host countries, and I can see even the private sectors, the private companies. Sunda Enterprise in China distributed masks yesterday. I was having a chat with one of their directors, and I was like, I can see you guys are doing very well in Ghana. Thanks so much. It's like, well, that is what we are supposed to do. So generally, the relations is going to strengthen because Africans, we have a way of appreciating who helps us when we need it.
Right.
So I definitely think that African countries are going to appreciate Beijing, and they are going to be drawn more into Beijing. So I can hear the sound of the person coming for my temperature. So I just have to go now. Yes.
I'll talk about what's happening. So friends, what we're seeing now is Sylvester is quarantined, but he has to get his temperature
So I
checked.
have to take my temperature every morning. I just put it in my armpit.
Oh wow. Okay, so will she come back for it?
What?
Will she come back for it?
I didn't get that, Bridget.
No, I'm saying, will she? You said you have to put something in your armpit. Will she come back for the thing?
The thermometer, yeah, she will come back for it in 5 minutes.
Oh wow! I thought it was the gun that they put to your head, the thermometer gun.
No, they didn't bring that. Yes, I don't know why she brought this today.
Oh, okay. So then let's wrap up before she kind of comes back. So folks, what you just saw was Sylvester and I were talking about the fact that at his dormitory they get their temperature checked every morning. I was saying that I haven't experienced that even when I go to like stores in the U.S. So that might tell you, kind of the level to which each country can and is dealing with this pandemic at this time.
Yes.
So Sylvester, let's go back to the topic, which was, you feel like Sino-Africa relations will be strengthened, especially given kind of the need on the African continent and who's responding to it at this time, right? So I just want to end off with, like, we are both co-founders of a consultancy called Africans on China. We're really passionate about developing other leaders in the space. Can you speak to what you think young Africans should or can do at this time to make sure that they're in a good position or they're in a favorable position after this pandemic?
Well, the question is a bit.
Oh, sorry, guys. I believe Sylvester froze again. I hope he'll come back very soon. Okay, you're back. Go ahead. You were saying?
Yes, I was reading an article that said that after 9/11, the focus was on terrorism,
Mm,
and possibly after this pandemic, the focus will now be on public health and
mm,
all that. So, what I think young Africans can do after here is to, well, in the Sino-African space, is to see what they can do to help the two countries. So, we know that China I mean, medicine. To study medicine in China is worthwhile, and
mm,
so young Africans can take it as an opportunity to come down to China and study what it is, so that they can help in times of troubles like this. Just to study about public health, to study about medicine, to study about pandemics, to study about viruses and all that. So, and also during this time, young Africans must just make sure that they bring out what they think, what for instance, what Jack Ma is doing, what do they think critically,
mm,
objectively,
mm-hmm.
to contribute to the conversation out there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So Sylvester, thank you so much. I'd like to end off by like kind of summarizing some of my takeaways, just so that, we can, if there's anything else you want to add, you kind of have an opportunity to do that as well. So one of the things I really got out of it is, get into the broader world what the Chinese motto or the manifesto is, which is a shared future for all mankind, and how that's playing out and how we will see perhaps China's position after this. We also had a chance to talk about your experience in China, especially coming in just 3 to 4 months before the pandemic kind of broke out in Wuhan and spread throughout China and the rest of the world. You also talked about the fact that you believe that China-Africa relations will be strengthened at this time. I've gotten so much out of this conversation, so much perspective. We also talked a little bit about how the response in the US is completely different to the response in China, and perhaps what we might see going forward between the two countries. So is there anything else you want to add before we close off?
Okay, so before we close off, I want to say thank you for having me here to share my views on the current issues. But
Mm-hmm.
quickly, I want to say the coronavirus is not a joke.
Mm,
When I heard that Prince Charles got infested, tested positive, I was like, wow, this is really not a joke.
mm,
Anybody can get infested.
mm-hmm.
So we should be on the guard.
Mm-hmm.
Let's limit on the blame game for now.
Mm.
Okay, so I have to take back the thermometer. Yeah.
Yes, folks. So this has been, as real as it gets. I could potentially edit this out, but I also think it adds nuance and context to the conversation. We actually see him getting tested, and what the day-to-day life is actually for people in China. Yep.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
back.
So,
I'm done
so
for the morning.
okay, that's good. So you were saying that so people should take it seriously. It can affect
Yes,
everyone. Yeah.
and let's limit down on the blame game. The geopolitics should be limited. I would love to hear Trump call the virus by its name.
Mm,
And I personally want to see China and the US come together to fight this. That is what
mm,
I've been hoping to see all along.
mm,
And I will urge all countries to keep on with the social distancing. Countries should test, trace, and
mm.
quarantine. Yes, I think we can fight against this virus and win if we pool our resources together. And I wish all countries all the best. Let's stay safe, and
Sounds good.
yeah, all is well.
It will be well. Thank you so much, Sylvester. Alrighty.
Uh,
Friends, thank you so much for your time today. I had a wonderful guest on my show. I hope you took a lot out of the conversation. If you like this, please leave a comment, subscribe to my channel. You can connect with Sylvester. I'll leave his email or some contact information below if you want to continue the conversation with him. Sylvester, again, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bridget, for having me. Bye bye.
Bye.